Your soulmate is desperate to tell you what happened last night. My beloved child, stop for just a heartbeat. There is a reason your attention landed here at this exact moment. Some moments arrive quietly, yet they carry the power to redirect an entire future. Last night, while the world was wrapped in silence, something unfolded that your soulmate never expected. It wasn't a dramatic scene anyone else would notice. It wasn't the kind of event that makes headlines. It was deeply personal. Deeply emotional, and now they feel an overwhelming need to tell you everything. The strange part is that they keep replaying those moments over and over, wondering if you somehow felt them too. Have you noticed a sudden feeling you couldn't explain? A memory appearing out of nowhere? Or a quiet pull towards someone you haven't even met yet? Stay with this story, because every piece connects, and what seems ordinary now may become unforgettable before this journey is over. Picture the stillness of the night. The lights had faded, conversations had ended, and distractions slowly disappeared. That was when your soulmate found themselves alone with thoughts they had been avoiding for far too long. For the first time in a long while, there was no noise left to hide behind. In that silence, something shifted. They began looking back, not with regret, but with clarity. Faces, memories, unfinished conversations, impossible dreams, everything seemed to zero. Line up like pieces of a puzzle waiting for one final connection. Then one thought refused to leave them. It wasn't about the past. It wasn't about fear. It was about you. Someone they haven't fully reached yet someone whose presence feels strangely familiar. The feeling became so powerful that they whispered into the silence, "When the time comes, I have to tell them what happened tonight." They don't even know why those words escaped so naturally, but they did. And once spoken, there was no taking them back. Now pause for a second and ask yourself something. What if certain nights are not meant for sleeping but for awakening? What if the universe allows certain truths to surface only when everything else becomes quiet? Your soulmate experienced one of those rare moments. It wasn't about receiving magical answers. It was about finally seeing what had always been there. They realized that every delay, every unexpected turn, every unanswered question had been shaping them into someone capable of recognizing something extraordinary when it finally appeared. That realization didn't frighten them. It gave them hope. Real hope. The kind that doesn't disappear with the sunrise. The kind that quietly says, "Keep going. You're closer than you think." But here's what makes last night impossible to ignore. They didn't wake up feeling the same person they were before. There was a calm confidence replacing confusion. Questions that had haunted them for months suddenly felt smaller. They began understanding that some connections cannot be forced, rushed, or forgotten. Instead, they unfold exactly when both people are becoming ready to understand them. That realization created one powerful desire inside them, to share this transformation with you someday. Not because they need approval. Not because they seek validation. But because they believe you deserve to know how one single evening changed the direction of their thinking forever. Listen carefully, because this next part matters more than it first appears. Sometimes people assume that life-changing moments arrive with loud announcements. In reality, they often arrive disguised as ordinary evenings. Last night looked completely ordinary from the outside. Yet inside your soulmate's heart, an invisible chapter quietly closed while another one began. They finally stopped asking, "Why hasn't everything happened yet?" Instead, they started asking, "How can I become ready for what is coming?" That single change in perspective unlocked something remarkable. It filled them with determination instead of doubt. And strangely enough, whenever your soulmate imagined the future after that moment, one presence kept appearing, not clearly, not completely, but consistently. A presence that brought peace rather than uncertainty. A presence that felt like home before they even understood why. Don't rush away just yet, because this is only the beginning of the story. The message your soulmate wants to tell you isn't only about what happened last night. It's about what that experience awakened inside them. Every unanswered question is slowly moving toward an answer. Every confusing path is beginning to reveal its direction. And while they may not know exactly when your paths will cross or when every hidden piece will finally make sense, they know one thing with complete certainty: after what happened last night, they can no longer pretend nothing has changed. Something within them has started moving toward a future they once doubted could exist, and somehow, every step forward feels like it is bringing them closer to the conversation they have been waiting to have with you. A quiet realization can change everything, and what happened after sunrise was even more unexpected than the night itself. Your soulmate carried those emotions into the new day, believing they would slowly fade as life became busy again. But the opposite happened. Every ordinary moment reminded them of the promise they had silently made to themselves. They couldn't ignore it anymore. It felt as though an invisible thread was gently pulling their attention toward a future they had never fully imagined before. If you're still here, stay with this unfolding story, because the next revelation explains why they have become so desperate to tell you what happened last night. They tried to distract themselves. Work. Responsibilities. Conversations. Familiar routines. Everything that usually filled their day was still there, yet none of it felt the same. Their thoughts kept returning to one unforgettable realization: life is too precious to leave meaningful words unspoken. That understanding settled deep within them. They began noticing how often people postpone important conversations, assuming there will always be another opportunity. But last night had taught them something different. It reminded them that honesty has its own perfect timing, and when that moment arrives, it deserves to be embraced rather than delayed. Then something quietly remarkable happened. While looking back over old memories, they realized they had been measuring life by the wrong things. They had focused on missed chances instead of personal growth. They had counted delays instead of lessons. Yet suddenly every difficult chapter appeared connected, as though each experience had been preparing them for a meeting that would eventually make perfect sense. Instead of frustration, they felt gratitude. Instead of uncertainty, they felt direction. That emotional shift became impossible to ignore. Now ask yourself this. What if someone else's breakthrough is quietly preparing the path for your own? What if two separate journeys are growing stronger without either person fully realizing it yet? Sometimes destiny doesn't rush. It patiently builds two stories until they are ready to understand one another. Your soulmate began sensing exactly that. They weren't searching for certainty anymore. They were becoming someone capable of recognizing it when it arrived. And that is why they keep replaying last night in their mind. Not because it was filled with dramatic events. Not because something unbelievable appeared before them. But because it transformed the way they see tomorrow. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped wondering whether life was working against them. They began believing it was quietly working with them. Every unexpected pause suddenly looked like preparation rather than punishment. Every unanswered question became an invitation to keep growing. That change in perspective gave them a calm confidence unlike anything they had experienced before. If this story is speaking to you, consider sharing your thoughts in the comments about what part resonates most with you. And if you enjoy journeys filled with hope, mystery, and meaningful discoveries, subscribing helps you continue exploring stories like this together with us. But the most fascinating part still hadn't happened. Later that day, while sitting alone for just a few peaceful moments, another realization appeared. It wasn't loud. It didn't interrupt their thoughts. It arrived gently, almost like a whisper carried by the future itself. You have something important to say. Those words echoed within them. Not once. Not twice. Again and again. They couldn't explain why such a simple thought carried so much emotion. Yet every time it returned, the same image followed close behind, a conversation that felt honest, freeing, and long overdue. A conversation where every misunderstanding disappears because both hearts have finally reached the same level of understanding. Your soulmate doesn't know exactly when that conversation will happen. They don't know exactly how it will begin. But they now believe it is worth preparing for. Instead of fearing what lies ahead, they have started becoming the kind of person who can meet the future with openness instead of hesitation. And perhaps that's the greatest secret hidden inside what happened last night. It wasn't simply about one unforgettable evening. It was about awakening the courage to stop hiding behind uncertainty and start walking toward truth with confidence. Stay a little longer, because the next chapter reveals the one detail your soulmate has told absolutely no one, a detail that explains why they believe this story is only just beginning. Before you move on, there's one final piece you haven't heard yet. It isn't the loudest part of this story, but it may become the one you remember the longest. Everything your soulmate experienced last night has been leading to this single realization. The answers they were searching for weren't hidden somewhere far away. They were quietly growing inside them all along. And now, they feel an urgency they cannot ignore. Not urgency born from fear, but from clarity. The kind of clarity that arrives only after someone finally understands what truly matters. As the evening returned once again, your soulmate found themselves standing beneath the open sky, watching the world slow down for a second time. Yet this night felt completely different from the one before. Yesterday they had questions. Today they carried purpose. They reflected on every unexpected turn life had taken. Every missed opportunity that later revealed a lesson. Every delay that somehow made them stronger instead of weaker. It was almost as if invisible pieces had been moving into place without them noticing. Then an extraordinary thought settled peacefully within them. What if every step has been preparing me for someone who is also preparing for me? That question didn't demand an answer. It created peace. For the first time, they stopped trying to control every outcome. Instead, they trusted that meaningful connections grow stronger when both people continue becoming their best selves. That quiet confidence changed the way they looked at everything ahead. And then, one simple promise formed in their heart. When the right moment arrives, I won't hide what happened last night. I will tell the whole story. Not because they wanted attention. Not because they wanted sympathy. But because they believed the experience could become the beginning of something honest, uplifting, and unforgettable. Think about that for a moment. How often do we imagine that life changes through one dramatic event, when in reality it changes through one honest decision? Your soulmate made that decision. They chose openness over hesitation. Hope over doubt. Growth over standing still. That choice may seem invisible today, but invisible choices often create the strongest futures. Now imagine two separate paths slowly moving toward the same destination. Neither path rushes. Neither competes. Each simply continues forward until the distance between them becomes smaller than either person realizes. That is exactly how your soulmate now sees this journey. Not as a race. Not as a mystery that must be solved overnight. But as a story unfolding one meaningful chapter at a time. Perhaps that's why they have become so desperate to tell you what happened last night. Because they know the story isn't really about last night anymore. It's about who they became because of it. The memories no longer feel heavy. The unanswered questions no longer feel frustrating. Instead, everything has become part of a bigger picture that continues revealing itself with every new day. And somewhere deep inside, they believe that when the moment finally arrives for your paths to cross in the way they have imagined, they won't begin with uncertainty. They'll begin with truth. They'll begin with gratitude. They'll begin with the words they have been carrying ever since that unforgettable night. I've been waiting to tell you this. Maybe that conversation happened sooner than expected. Maybe it arrives quietly, in the most ordinary moment imaginable. Or perhaps it appears exactly when both of you have grown into the people you were always meant to become. Until then, remember this. Some stories don't become powerful because they happen quickly. They become powerful because every chapter shapes the next one. And this story is still being written. So whenever you think back to the title of this journey, your soulmate is desperate to tell you what happened last night, remember that the greatest revelation was never just the event itself. It was the transformation it awakened. A transformation filled with hope. With courage. With quiet confidence. And with the belief that the most meaningful conversations in life are always worth waiting for. Another day has passed, yet the feeling inside your soulmate hasn't faded. If anything, it has become even clearer. Some experiences disappear with time, but others grow stronger because they reveal a truth that can no longer be ignored. What happened that night wasn't simply a memory. It became the beginning of a new way of seeing the future. And today, your soulmate carries one quiet thought everywhere they go. When the moment comes, I don't want silence to speak for me. I want honesty to. As they continued through the day, something unexpected happened. They started noticing little reminders that life is always moving forward. A familiar song. A meaningful conversation. A peaceful sunset. None of these moments seemed extraordinary on their own, yet together they formed a gentle message: every season prepares us for the next. Instead of wondering why certain things hadn't happened yet, they began appreciating everything that had shaped them into who they are becoming. Then another realization arrived. They understood that meaningful connections are not built only by perfect timing, they are built by personal growth. The more they embraced patience, kindness, and self-awareness, the more they felt prepared for the future they once only imagined. And that's when a quiet smile appeared. Not because every answer had arrived, but because they no longer needed every answer to believe something beautiful was unfolding. Pause here for a moment. Have you ever noticed that the strongest confidence isn't loud? It doesn't demand attention. It simply stays steady, even when the path ahead is still unfolding. That is exactly what your soulmate discovered after everything that happened. They stopped chasing certainty and started trusting their own growth. And strangely enough, the more they focused on becoming their best self, the more hopeful the future began to feel. There is one final truth they want you to know. Last night didn't give them a perfect roadmap. It gave them a new perspective. A perspective that says every challenge can become wisdom. Every delay can become preparation. Every unanswered question can become an invitation to keep moving forward with hope. That is why they feel so desperate to tell you what happened. Not because they believe one conversation will magically change everything, but because they believe truth shared at the right time has the power to strengthen two journeys at once. Imagine meeting someone whose heart has already learned the lessons it once resisted. Imagine beginning a conversation where honesty replaces assumptions. Imagine realizing that every chapter leading up to that moment had a purpose you couldn't see before. That is the future your soulmate quietly believes is possible. And perhaps that's the greatest message hidden inside this entire story. Not that destiny removes every obstacle, but that destiny often prepares people long before they recognize the preparation. If this journey has encouraged you, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective may inspire someone else who is walking a similar path. And if stories of hope, purpose, and meaningful connection speak to your heart, subscribing is a simple way to stay connected for the next chapter. As this chapter closes, remember one thing above all else. The story was never about chasing someone. It was about becoming someone. Someone ready to speak honestly. Someone ready to listen deeply. Someone ready to step into tomorrow with courage instead of hesitation. Because somewhere ahead, a conversation is waiting. A conversation that begins not with fear, not with doubt, but with calm confidence and genuine understanding. Until that day arrives, keep growing, keep believing, and keep moving forward. Sometimes the most meaningful message isn't the one spoken first. It's the one that has been patiently preparing itself all along. Just when it seemed the story had reached its destination, another layer quietly revealed itself. The truth your soulmate has been carrying isn't growing weaker with time, it is becoming impossible for them to keep inside. Every new morning reminds them of what they discovered that unforgettable night. Every peaceful evening brings the same quiet thought back into focus. And now they realize something they never expected: sometimes the hardest message to share is also the most important one. Think about this for a moment. How many words remain unspoken simply because people wait for the perfect moment? Your soulmate asked themselves that very question. The answer surprised them. They understood that perfection isn't what creates meaningful conversations. Presence does. Honesty does. The willingness to be real does. From that moment forward, they made a silent promise that whenever life creates the opportunity, they will no longer allow uncertainty to speak louder than truth. As that promise settled into their heart, another unexpected realization followed. They no longer viewed the future as something distant. Instead, they began treating every single day as preparation. Every lesson became valuable. Every challenge became meaningful. Every small victory became proof that growth happens quietly before it becomes visible. That shift changed everything. For the first time, they stopped asking, "Will the right moment ever arrive?" Instead they asked, "Who am I becoming before it does?" That single question opened a completely new chapter in their life. They started paying attention to the person they were becoming rather than the things they couldn't control. Bit by bit, they noticed greater patience replacing frustration. Greater confidence replacing hesitation. Greater gratitude replacing endless questions. And with every